I was 50 feet underground in a cave system that shouldn't exist when my thermal camera picked up something that made my hands shake. Not one heat signature, but three, and they were communicating with each other using actual words. When the largest one turned toward me, I had maybe 2 seconds to decide, run or let it show me what it was trying to say. But here's what nobody's asking. If I captured 40 minutes of clear footage proving they're real, why did I delete almost all of it? And what exactly did I see down there that was so dangerous I couldn't let it go public? I've been a wildlife videographer for 8 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these mountains had to offer. Elk migrations, bear dens, mountain lion kills, all of it. I make my living selling footage to nature documentaries and outdoor channels. It's not glamorous work. Most days I'm sitting in the cold for hours waiting for something interesting to happen. My girlfriend Emma says I spend more time with animals than I do with her. She's probably right, but that's the job. You go where the wildlife is, and you wait. That November day started like any other. I was up in the Klamath Range in Northern California, about 40 miles from the nearest paved road. The elk herds move through this area every fall, and I'd been tracking them for a week. My thermal camera was set up on a ridge overlooking a valley. Thermal imaging picks up heat signatures so you can see animals even in the dark or through brush. It's expensive equipment, but it pays for itself. One good shot of a wolf pack or a rare owl can bring in enough money to cover my rent for months. The sun was going down. I had maybe an hour of good light left. The elk herd had moved through earlier, and I was packing up my gear when the thermal camera beeped. Motion detected. I looked at the screen and saw a heat signature moving along the valley floor. It was big, bigger than an elk. My first thought was bear. We have black bears up here, and occasionally a grizzly wanders down from further north. I zoomed in and started recording. The signature moved differently than a bear, though. Bears lumber. They sway side to side when they walk. This thing moved upright, steady, purposeful. I adjusted the focus and watched it cross an open area near the tree line. That's when I got my first clear look at the shape. It was tall. The thermal camera measures height based on known reference points. According to my screen, this thing was over 7 feet tall. And it was walking on 2 legs. Not sometimes on 2 legs like a bear standing up to smell the air. It was walking upright like a person walks. My mouth went dry. I told myself it was a person. Had to be. Maybe a hiker. But hikers don't come out this far without gear, and I couldn't see any backpack shape on the thermal image. No coat either. The signature showed bare skin or fur, whatever it was, generating heat all over its body. A person in November this far up would freeze without layers. I kept recording. The thing moved toward a rock face on the far side of the valley. I almost lost it in the cliff's cold signature, but then I saw where it went. There was a cave opening, not a big obvious one, just a dark split in the rock, maybe 4 feet wide. The heat signature paused at the entrance, and then it went inside and disappeared. I played the footage back 3 times right there on the ridge. Each time I watched, my heart beat a little faster. The way it moved was wrong for a bear. The size was wrong for a person. And there was something else. Just before it entered the cave, the camera picked up audio. I had a directional microphone pointed at the valley for capturing animal sounds. When I turned up the volume and filtered out the wind, I heard it. A low sound, rhythmic. Not a growl, not a grunt. It sounded almost like speech, like someone talking in a language I didn't understand. I packed up my equipment as the last light faded. The hike back to my truck took an hour, and the whole time my brain was spinning. I've filmed hundreds of bears. This wasn't a bear. I've been around people my whole life. This wasn't a person. So what was it? When I got home, Emma was already asleep. I went straight to my computer and loaded the footage. On my bigger monitor with better speakers, I could see even more detail. The heat signature showed long arms, broad shoulders, a head that sat forward on the neck, not quite human posture, but close, and that sound it made before entering the cave. I isolated it and played it over and over. It had structure, it had rhythm. Whatever made that sound was trying to communicate something. I did what any idiot with exciting footage does. I edited a 10-second clip and posted it online. Just the part where the thing walks across the open area. I didn't show the cave entrance. I didn't want people rushing out there and disturbing whatever it was. I just posted the clip with a simple question. What is this? Filmed in Northern California? Serious answers only. I went to bed around midnight. When I woke up 6 hours later, the post was gone, completely deleted. Not just taken down by the platform, the entire post had vanished like it never existed. I checked my account. Everything else was still there. Just that one post was missing. I thought maybe it was a glitch, so I posted it again. Same clip, same question. I went to make coffee. 20 minutes later, I checked my phone. Gone again. That's when the email came. No name, no subject line, just a message. Stop looking for your own safety. That was it, nothing else. I checked the sender address. It was just random letters and numbers. The kind of temporary email you can make in 2 seconds and delete. No way to trace it, no way to respond. I sat there at my kitchen table with my coffee getting out, staring at that email. Someone was watching. Someone saw my post in the few minutes it was live, and they wanted me to stop. The smart thing would have been to listen. Delete the footage, forget about it, go back to filming elk and eagles. That would have been the smart thing. But I kept thinking about that cave entrance, about those long arms and that sound that wasn't quite speech, but wasn't quite animal either. I kept thinking about what might be living down there in the dark and why someone wanted so badly to keep it hidden. I spent 3 days trying to talk myself out of going back. Emma said I was being obsessed. She said it was probably just a bear and some hiker with a weird email sense of humor trying to mess with me. She had a point. The smart move was to let it go, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that heat signature moving across the valley. I heard that sound, and I kept thinking about that email. Why would someone tell me to stop looking unless there was actually something to find? On the 4th day, I loaded my truck before sunrise. I didn't tell Emma where I was going. I just said I had some follow-up shots to get for a project. That was true enough. I packed my climbing gear, rope, harness, carabiners, the works. I brought 3 flashlights, extra batteries, and my chest-mounted camera. The kind that straps across your body and records everything you see. If I was going into that cave, I wanted my hands free, and I wanted everything on video. The drive took 2 hours. The hike from where I parked took another hour and a half. By the time I reached the valley, the sun was up, but the air was still cold enough to see my breath. I made my way to the rock face where I'd seen the thing enter. Up close, the cave entrance looked smaller than I expected. Maybe 3 feet wide, 4 feet tall. I'd have to crouch to get inside. The opening was dark. My flashlight beam disappeared into it like it was swallowing the light. I checked my camera. Recording. I checked my spare flashlight. Working. I took a breath and ducked inside. The cave smelled like wet stone and something else. Something organic. Not quite rot, but not fresh either. Like an animal den. The ceiling was low for the first 20 feet. I had to stay crouched, and my knees started aching. Then the space opened up. I could stand. The cave widened into a chamber about the size of my living room. That's when I started noticing things that made my skin crawl. The floor wasn't just bare rock. There were patches of dried grass arranged in a corner, not scattered randomly like wind would blow it. Arranged, flattened down like bedding, like something slept there. Near the grass, I saw stones stacked in a pile. Not a natural pile from a rockfall. These were stacked deliberately. 5 stones, each one smaller than the one below it, balanced carefully. Someone or something had placed them that way. I moved my flashlight around the chamber and saw more. Fish bones, lots of them. They were arranged in lines along one wall. Some of the lines were straight, some curved. It looked almost like writing, like someone was trying to make pictures or symbols. My chest felt tight. Animals don't do this. Animals don't stack stones or arrange bones in patterns. Animals don't make beds out of grass inside caves. I heard it then. That same sound from my thermal footage. Low and rhythmic. But this time it wasn't distant. It was close. And it wasn't just one source. It was coming from multiple directions. The sound echoed off the cave walls, so I couldn't tell exactly where it originated. My hands shook as I held the flashlight. The camera on my chest kept recording. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow. I swept my light across the chamber and found another opening, a tunnel leading deeper into the rock. This one sloped downward. The walls were smooth, too smooth. I moved closer and ran my hand along the stone. It felt worn, like something had passed through here so many times it had polished the rock. I looked down at the floor of the tunnel and that's when I saw them. Handprints, pressed into a patch of dried mud near the tunnel entrance. They were huge, easily twice the size of my own hand. 4 fingers and a thumb, just like a human hand, but massive. I wasn't in a cave, I was at home. Something lived here, something big enough to leave handprints that size, something smart enough to stack stones and weave grass into bedding. My brain was screaming at me to leave. Every instinct I had said, turn around and get out, but my feet kept moving forward. I stepped into the downward tunnel. The temperature dropped. I could feel it on my face and hands. The air got damper. Water was dripping somewhere ahead. My flashlight beam showed the tunnel curving to the left. I followed it, hunched over, one hand on the wall to steady myself. The sound came again. Closer now, that rhythmic vocalization. It echoed through the tunnel and seemed to surround me. Then I heard something else. Breathing, not my breathing. This was deeper, slower. It was coming from ahead, from around the curve in the tunnel. I froze. My light was still pointed forward, but I couldn't see around the bend. The breathing continued, in and out, steady. Whatever was making that sound was just around the corner, maybe 20 feet away, maybe less. I don't know how long I stood there. It felt like an hour, but was probably only seconds. My finger hovered over the flashlight button. Part of me wanted to turn it off and hide in the darkness. Part of me needed to see, needed to know. I took one step forward, then another. My boots scraped against the stone and the sound seemed as loud as a gunshot in that tunnel. The breathing stopped. Complete silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took another step and rounded the curve. My flashlight beam hit something. A shape. Crouched low, too big to be human. Its eyes caught the light and reflected back at me. Not like animal eyes that glow. These eyes just caught the light and held it, dark and focused. And they were looking right at me. The thing didn't move, neither did I. We just stared at each other in the beam of my flashlight. It was crouched against the tunnel wall, arms wrapped around its knees, not in an attack position, more like it was making itself smaller, trying not to be threatening. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. It looked almost human. The basic shape was right, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head on shoulders, but everything was wrong in the details. The proportions were off, the arms were too long, the shoulders are too wide, and it was covered in dark reddish-brown hair, not fur like a bear, hair, like a person's hair but thicker and all over its body. It was smaller than the one I'd seen on thermal, maybe 7 feet tall if it stood up. Younger maybe, a juvenile. That thought terrified me more than anything else because if this was a young one, where were the adults? The creature made a sound, not aggressive, almost curious. A soft huff followed by something else, something that sounded like a word. Taco. It came out clear, 2 syllables, deliberate. My mouth opened but nothing came out. The creature tilted its head and repeated the sound. Taco. It was trying to communicate. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out slowly and forced myself to stay calm. My camera was still recording. Every second of this was being captured. The creature watched me with those dark eyes. There was intelligence there. I could see it. This wasn't an animal staring at me. This was something to think about, something deciding what to do about the human in its home. I raised one hand slowly, palm out, the universal gesture for I mean no harm. The creature's eyes followed my hand. It made another sound, softer this time. Then it did something that made my chest tighten. It raised its own hand, mimicking me, palm out. The hand was massive, the fingers were thick and calloused, but the gesture was unmistakable. It was copying what I did, trying to communicate back. We stayed like that for maybe 10 seconds. Both of us with our hands raised, both of us trying to figure out what came next. Then the creature lowered its hand and gestured toward the deeper part of the tunnel, down into the darkness where my light didn't reach. The gesture was clear. It wanted me to see something, or it wanted to show me something. Before I could decide whether to follow, I heard movement behind the creature. Something bigger was coming. Heavy footsteps, deliberate. The juvenile's head turned toward the sound. It made a quick series of vocalizations, fast and urgent, like it was explaining something, or maybe warning something. A shape emerged from the darkness behind it. Bigger, much bigger. This one had to be at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. It moved between me and the juvenile, protective, positioning itself as a barrier, the adult. This one didn't crouch. It stood at full height even though the tunnel ceiling was low. Its head nearly touched the stone above. The shoulders were impossibly broad. The chest was thick with muscle under the hair. This was the one I'd seen on thermal. I was sure of it. The adult made a sound, deep and rumbling. It came from low in its chest. The juvenile responded with its own vocalization. They were talking, back and forth. The sounds had structure, inflection, rising tones and falling tones. This wasn't random noise, this was language. The adult looked at me. Its eyes were different from the juvenile's, harder, more cautious. It took one step forward and I took one step back. My shoulders hit the tunnel wall. There was nowhere to go. I was trapped in a stone corridor with something that could break me in half without effort. But it didn't attack. It just watched, studying me the same way I was studying it. Then it did something I didn't expect. It looked down at my chest, at my camera. The red recording light was blinking. The adult reached out one massive hand and pointed at the camera. Then it pointed at its own eyes. Then back at the camera. It knew what the camera was. It understood I was recording. My voice finally worked. "I won't hurt you," I said. The words sounded stupid as soon as they left my mouth, like this thing needed my permission to feel safe in its own home. But the adult's head tilted slightly at the sound of my voice. It made another sound, not aggressive, questioning. Then it turned its head and called out into the darkness. Another vocalization, different from the ones it had made to the juvenile. This one was longer, more complex. I heard a response from somewhere deeper in the cave system. Another voice, a third one. The adult looked back at me and made a decision. It stepped to the side, not blocking the tunnel anymore, leaving space for me to pass. The juvenile moved too, pressing against the wall to make room. The adult gestured again, the same gesture the juvenile had made, pointing deeper into the tunnel, into the darkness. This wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. They wanted me to follow them. They wanted to show me something. Every logical part of my brain said no, said turn around and run. But I thought about that email. Stop looking. I thought about my footage being deleted twice. Someone didn't want this discovered. Someone wanted these things to stay hidden. And here they were, inviting me deeper into their world, trusting me in a way I wasn't sure I'd earned. I took a step forward, then another. The adult watched me pass. I could smell it. That same musky scent from my first visit, but stronger now. Animal and earthy and wild. The juvenile made a soft sound as I walked by, almost encouraging. The adult fell in behind me. I could hear its breathing, feel its presence at my back. The juvenile moved ahead, leading the way into the darkness. My flashlight beam showed the tunnel widening again, opening into another chamber, but this one was different. As I stepped into the space, I could see shapes, objects, things arranged deliberately, and then I saw something that made my blood turn cold. On the floor near the far wall, partially covered by rocks, was a backpack, modern, nylon, and attached to it was a patch, Forest Service, a ranger patch. Someone else had been here, and they hadn't left. My flashlight stayed locked on that backpack. The green Forest Service patch stood out against the faded blue nylon. It wasn't old and rotted, it looked recent, maybe a few months at most. The straps were still intact. The zippers weren't rusted. Someone had worn that pack into this cave system not that long ago, and now it was here, partially buried under rocks that had been deliberately placed over it. My stomach twisted. I turned slowly to look at the adult standing behind me. It wasn't looking at me, it was looking at the backpack. Its expression, if you could call it that, seemed sad. The massive shoulders slumped slightly. It made a low sound, long and mournful. Not a threat, something closer to grief. The juvenile had moved to the side of the chamber and sat down on the stone floor, watching both of us. The adult stepped past me, moving toward the backpack with careful steps. It knelt down, and even kneeling, it was taller than me standing. It reached out one huge hand and touched the rocks covering the pack. Gently, like you'd touch a grave marker. Then it looked back at me and made a sound. Not the same sounds it had made before. Was different, slower, more deliberate. It was trying to tell me something, trying to explain. I didn't understand the sounds, but I understood the gesture. It pointed to the backpack. Then it pointed to the tunnel we'd come through. Then it made a sharp cutting motion with its hand. Stop! The ranger had come here, and the ranger had been stopped. My throat went dry. These things had killed someone. Maybe to protect this place. Maybe because the ranger threatened them. It didn't matter why. What mattered was I was standing in a cave with creatures that had ended a human life. The adult stood and moved to the wall of the chamber. It picked up a stone from the floor. Not a small one. This stone was the size of my fist, flat on one side. It turned to the wall and started scratching. The sound of stone on stone echoed through the chamber. I watched as it dragged the rock across the surface, carving lines into the wall. Circles, lines connecting them. More circles. It worked slowly, deliberately. After a minute, it stepped back. The scratches formed a pattern. 3 circles connected by lines. The adult pointed to the pattern. Then it pointed to itself. Then to the juvenile. Then to the darkness beyond the chamber. 3 circles. 3 of them. It wasn't done. It picked up the stone again and scratched more. A larger circle around the 3 smaller ones. Then it drew lines radiating out from that circle, like the sun, or like territory. The adult tapped the large circle with one finger. Then it swept its arm around the chamber. This place. This was theirs. The lines radiating out were boundaries. This cave system was their home, their territory. It pointed to the drawing again. Then it pointed at me. Then it pointed back toward the tunnel entrance, back the way we'd come. The message was clear. Leave. This is our home. You need to leave. But it wasn't aggressive. The adult wasn't threatening me. It was asking. No, not asking. It was explaining. Showing me the boundaries and trusting me to respect them. I thought about the ranger. Had the ranger respected those boundaries? Or had they pushed too far? Threatened these creatures? My camera was still recording all of this. The drawings, the gestures, the way the adult was trying to communicate without violence, trying to make me understand. The juvenile made a soft sound from its spot on the floor. The adult looked over at it and made a short reply. They exchanged a few more vocalizations. Then the juvenile stood and walked over to me. Up close, I could see its face more clearly. The features were almost human, a flat nose, deep-set eyes, a heavy brow ridge. But there was something in those eyes that reminded me of people I knew. Curiosity, caution, intelligence. The juvenile reached out slowly and touched my camera. Just one finger against the lens. Gentle. It made that sound again. Taco! Then it pointed at the camera, then at its own eyes, then at me as if it understood. It knew I was recording. It knew I was seeing them. And for some reason it seemed okay with that. Or maybe it was testing me, seeing what I would do with what I'd captured. The adult made a longer vocalization. The juvenile stepped back. The adult moved to the backpack again and began placing more rocks over it, covering it completely. The movements were careful, respectful. This wasn't hiding evidence. This was a burial. When the backpack was fully covered, the adult pressed both hands flat on the pile of rocks and was still for a long moment, paying respects. Then it stood and looked at me again. It made a pushing motion with both hands, gentle but firm. Go. Leave now. I understood. I'd been shown something important, something these creatures wanted me to know. They weren't mindless animals. They had language. They had territory. They had grief, and they had killed to protect what was theirs. But they were giving me a chance. a chance to leave peacefully, to respect their boundaries. The question was whether others would show the same respect. I thought about my footage, about what it would mean if I showed the world what I'd recorded. These creatures would become targets, specimens, trophies. The adult seemed to sense my hesitation. It made another sound, softer this time, almost gentle. Then it reached out one massive hand and placed it on my shoulder. The weight was enormous. I felt the strength in that hand. It could crush me without effort, but the touch was careful, controlled. It squeezed once, not hard, just pressure. Then it released me and pointed toward the tunnel exit one more time. The juvenile moved to stand beside the adult. They stood together, watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I took a step backward, then another. They didn't follow, they just watched. I backed up until I reached the tunnel entrance. I took one last look at them. The adult raised its hand, palm out, the same gesture I'd made when we first met. The juvenile did the same. I raised my own hand in response. Then I turned and walked back through the tunnel, back through the chamber with the grass bedding and stacked stones, back toward daylight in the world I knew. Behind me I heard them, two voices calling back and forth, fading as I moved away. Language I couldn't understand, but recognized as real, as meaningful, as proof that I wasn't alone in these mountains, that something else lived here, something that deserved to be left in peace. The hike back to my truck felt like walking through a dream. My legs moved on autopilot while my brain tried to process what had just happened. I'd been underground with them. They'd communicated with me. They'd shown me their home, their language, their grief. The camera on my chest had recorded everything. 40 minutes of footage, clear footage, undeniable footage. The kind of proof people had been searching for since before I was born. My hands shook as I loaded my gear into the truck bed. The drive home took forever. Every mile felt heavy. I kept seeing that adult's hand on my shoulder, feeling the controlled strength in that touch. The choice it made not to hurt me. The trust it showed by letting me into their world. By the time I reached the city limits, the sun was setting. Rush hour traffic crawled along the freeway. Normal people doing normal things, going home from work, picking up groceries. None of them had any idea what I just experienced, what I had on the memory card in my camera. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the local news station. It was one of the bigger ones. They had connections to national networks. If anyone could get this footage out to the world, it was them. I sat in the parking lot with the engine running, staring at the building. This was it. This was my chance. Career making didn't even cover it. This footage would make me famous. Rich, probably. Every documentary, every news show, every podcast would want to talk to me. Universities would want to study the footage. The government would get involved. This was bigger than anything I'd ever done or would ever do. I pulled the memory card from my camera and held it between my fingers. So small, so light. Everything on this little piece of plastic and metal. I could walk into that building right now, hand it over, watch my life change in an instant. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. "Where are you? Dinner's ready." I looked at the message. I looked at the memory card. I looked at the news station. Then I opened the camera app on my phone and pulled up the footage I just recorded. I started watching from the beginning. The tunnel, the chamber, the juvenile crouching against the wall. That first moment of contact when it said "Taco" and raised its hand to mirror mine. I watched the adults emerge. Watch it position itself protectively. Watch the exchange of vocalizations, the language, the intelligence. Then I watched the part with the backpack, the burial. The drawings on the wall explained territory and boundaries. The gentle push told me to leave, the hand on my shoulder. That moment of connection between two completely different beings. I watched it all the way through. When it ended, I sat there in silence. Then I opened my photo editing app and started scrubbing through the footage. I found the part I wanted, just 10 seconds. The juvenile making that sound. Taco, the curiosity in its eyes, the tilt of its head. I clipped just that section, 10 seconds. No context, no location markers, no cave visible, just a close-up of the juvenile's face and that single vocalization. I saved it as a separate file. Then I opened a new post on my social media. I uploaded just that 10-second clip. No explanation of where it was filmed. No GPS coordinates. No mention of the cave system. Just a simple caption. What if we're the ones being studied? I hit the post and watched it go live. Then I ejected the memory card from my phone, took it and the one from my chest camera, and drove home. Emma was waiting at the table. The food was cold, but she kept my plate covered. She looked at me and her face shifted. "What happened?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I sat down across from her. "I need to tell you something," I said. I told her everything. The cave, the juvenile, the adult, the language, the burial, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the question I'd been asking myself. "What are you going to do with the footage?" I pulled both memory cards from my pocket and set them on the table between us. "That's the thing," I said. "I keep thinking about what happens next if I release it. Within a week, that valley would be crawling with people. Helicopters, research teams, hunters, people with tranquilizer darts calling it science. People with rifles call it sport. The government would classify the whole area. Or worse, they'd try to capture them, study them, put them in a facility somewhere." Emma picked up one of the cards and turned it over in her fingers. "So you're just going to sit on it?" she asked. "Pretend it didn't happen?" "No," I said. "I posted a clip, just 10 seconds. The juvenile's face. No location, no context. Enough to make people wonder. Enough to keep the mystery alive. But not enough to lead anyone back to them." She nodded slowly. "What about the rest?" I took the cards back. "The rest stays with me. Locked away, maybe forever. Maybe until I know it's safe to share. I don't know yet." I thought about that email I'd received days ago. Stop looking, for your own safety. Now I understood. It wasn't a threat to me. It was a warning to protect them. Someone else knew. Someone else was trying to keep them safe. My phone started buzzing. Notifications. The 10-second clip was already spreading. Comments pouring in. This real? Where was this filmed? Fake. Definitely fake. That's the most realistic thing I've ever seen. Within an hour, it had 1,000 views. Within 2 hours, 10,000. By morning, it would be everywhere. And then it would disappear. I knew it would. The same way my first post disappeared. Someone was watching. Someone was protecting them. And now I was part of that protection. I took the memory cards to my office and locked them in my fireproof safe. The same safe where I keep my passport and birth certificate and the deed to my truck. Important things. Irreplaceable things. I closed the safe door and spun the lock. Emma stood in the doorway watching. "Do you think you did the right thing?" she asked. I thought about the adult's hand on my shoulder, the juvenile's curious eyes, the careful burial of the ranger who'd pushed too far. "I think I did the only thing," I said. "They showed me their home. They trusted me to leave. Some neighbors deserve their privacy, even the ones who were here first." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, but I ignored it. I kept thinking about that cave, about 3 circles connected by lines, about a family living in the darkness, speaking a language nobody understood, trying to survive in a world that would destroy them if it knew they existed. The footage wasn't mine to share. It never was. It belonged to them. And the most dangerous thing I'd captured wasn't proof that they existed. It was proof that they were just like us, families protecting their young, communities with language and culture, beings with grief and gentleness, and the capacity for both mercy and violence. That's what would make them targets, not their existence, but their humanity. So I made my choice. The world could keep wondering, keep searching, keep debating, and somewhere in those mountains, 3 beings could keep living, keep speaking their language, keep stacking stones and weaving grass and burying their dead with respect. They'd shown me something no camera could ever capture. They'd shown me that some things are more important than proof. Some mysteries are meant to stay mysteries. Not because the truth isn't real, but because the truth is too precious to expose, and that's a secret I'll carry alone.